On this channel, I cover such a wide variety of games, but we mostly focus around the historical genre, whether it's ancients to World War II, Renaissance or medieval. Having such a big net lets us look into so many different genres and styles, but it's safe to say medieval is really what blew up this channel, and I think what a lot of people that watch it like to focus on when they come to watching my content, and sometimes we get a few dry patches. You see, the medieval genre is hit and miss. You have some incredible games, and then you have nothing for a long time, and all of a sudden another incredible game will come out. But I have a hypothesis that 2020 to 2021 has been the best year or so for medieval gaming, and in this video it is my aim to try and prove that to you. So without further ado, this is why 2020 to 2021 has been the best year for medieval games. Okay, let's set out some boundaries. We are going to push it a little bit. This is sort of starting in early March of 2020, going all the way up to where we are now. So it's a tiny bit over a year, but only by one game. So bear with me on that one. Because of course we start with the one that really blew up this channel in the first place, and why I think a lot of you guys are watching this video. On the 30th of March 2020, Mount & Blade II Bannerlord released. After a supposed 8 years of development, it was probably one of the most waited for games of our generation. Okay, we can forget about Half-Life 3. That's almost on another level. But when it comes to a medieval period, a medieval title, Mount & Blade sort of rules over most, or at least it did at that point. Warband was such a popular game, not just in its single player, but also its multiplayer, with clan battles and community events, with single player modding and storytelling that had not really been done in a game of such a small budget. An indie title that rivaled AAA gaming. So of course, it was quite right that the sequel would drum up a lot of hype, but it took years and years of teasing and false release dates to finally get it in an early access form at the height of the pandemic at the end of March in 2020. Being the 5th most played game on Steam upon its release, no one had ever seen anything like it, or at least from a company that was nowhere near the size of the AAA studios that we expect today. It's safe to say it was a polarizing release, with many bugs and issues at the start slowly being patched out with the additions of modding tools and then some brilliant overhaul mods that we're getting even to this day. But because of this big boom, because of Mount & Blade II Bannerlord pushing its way through the Steam charts to be one of the most played games at the time, it was a great kickoff to one of the best years in medieval gaming. Next we got Crusader Kings 3 in September of 2020, and this was a big one. Crusader Kings 2 is famous for being one of Paradox's best games and most beloved, set in a medieval period where it is your chance to go to war, make allies, have sex with your brother or sister. Yeah, Crusader Kings 3 is a strange one for me. See, Paradox games are hit and miss in my opinion. I know so many people love them, but as someone that has never fallen in love with them, Crusader Kings 3 has always been an interesting in for me. A medieval portal into the interesting and sophisticated way that Paradox designs their games. But despite this, it was a massive success. Even after the massive hyped up release coming from Crusader Kings 2 that was so well loved, the pressure on this next title was paramount to Paradox's next moves in the gaming world. But alas, sitting at over 40,000 very positive reviews on Steam, it is one of the biggest hitters this year. Then in addition, in September 2020 came Medieval Dynasty. Yes, that was a month to remember. An early access release that sort of came out of nowhere. A first-person survival in an open world that took you in the life of a peasant, not necessarily going to wars with armies, swords and weapons, but learning how to farm, build houses and form relationships with other people, building up your towns and recruiting people to join you, and being able to experience the medieval genre from a different view. A look through the window of a more realistic time during that era. As mentioned, this was an early access release in September of 2020, when the full release really came in 2021, which is why you can see we're sort of breaching the boundaries of both years over here. But as the year ticked over, as the disaster that was 2020 came to an end, everybody thought things would be different, and things would only go up from here. Well, when it comes to the medieval genre and medieval games in general, that was definitely the correlation we started to see. Valheim released in February of 2021, and I don't even think I need to explain why this is on the list. Why you could say this year was the biggest year for medieval gaming just because of this one game. Valheim was by Iron Gate Studios. They had never published a full game before. They'd made various versions of Valheim, calling it different things and releasing it for free on itch.io through development. But when it came out on Steam in February, the response was something else. Over 238,000 overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam by a debut game from this company. Surviving on your own or with other players in a co-op open world that would change and generate as you explored it. Building up bases, researching weapons and crafting, exploring dungeons and taking out enemies with your friends. Finding massive bosses that would take life after life as you slowly learn how to conquer each of these challenges the game threw at you. Building boats and setting sail in the ocean to find new lands to settle, and recently with the new Hearth and Home updates, plenty more additions, whether it's changing the food systems or adding so much more when it comes to base building, decoration, and intricate details taking you into this mythological Viking world. Valheim is so impressive because it came from nowhere, and it became the second most played game on Steam during its release. Hundreds of thousands of concurrent players, all coming together to this underdog that no one expected anything of. And whether this was the culmination of some really successful games in this genre that came before, the bannerlords, the Crusader Kings, that were pushing this historical genre into the mainstream, that Valheim then took the baton of and took it even further, it was safe to say that we were really on the rise now. We had a smaller game in May of 2021 in the form of Gloria Victis Siege Survival. Now, Gloria Victis, as many people will know, is a medieval MMORPG, a game that I haven't touched on too much because it's not really my type of thing, and the Siege Survival mode is a little bit different to that. You hold a city that is being besieged by enemies, and you must look after your people inside and build up the means and resources in order to survive, building camps, crafting supplies, and scavenging occupied cities to supply the last troops holding back the invaders. Now, admittedly, this is a much smaller game on the list and one that I haven't delved into all that much, but it's had some really good responses and leads us beautifully into the next hard hitter in the medieval genre. This is Chivalry 2. In June of 2021, we got our hands on the first-person slasher, the sequel to 2012's masterpiece. Perhaps the first Chivalry was a massive introduction, along with a game called War of the Roses, and of course Mount & Blade Warband back in the day. That trio really built up the medieval genre back then, and now Chivalry 2 and Bannerlord are still holding that torch in this new decade. Chivalry 2 introduced some incredible fast-paced casual gameplay, focused entirely on multiplayer, hacking and slashing, chopping off limbs and heads, being able to pick up anything on the battlefield, from chickens to wagon wheels to even ballista bolts that had been fired at you previously, going from level to level with massive sieges or slaughtering peasants in their own village. It was a bloody, gory mess, yet really sported that less intense, that less elitist side of the gaming world. People that just wanted to load up a game for an hour or so and have fun, not focus on XP grinding, moving through an intense and focus-pulling story, but just sitting back and chopping off limbs, because sometimes in life you just need to be able to do that. But in the same month, we got another big title. Going Medieval was a RimWorld-inspired medieval smash hit. It is a game that I haven't covered too much, but I did play when it initially came out, and I'm really looking to delve back more into it. It took a similar gameplay style to something like RimWorld, but gave you a more stripped-down version, almost a RimWorld tribalism gameplay, but it's the whole game. Building weapons, swords, towns, defenses to defend yourself from bandits, gaining resources, food, items, clothing to survive the harsh winters and the deadly wildlife beyond. It is really the hardcore strategy survival, a storyteller within itself. I love these types of games, and RimWorld is one of my most played games on Steam, and Going Medieval is something that I really want to be able to give more time to, because it is a fantastic title, and that was shown in its response. Graphically, it looked great, using this voxel-based graphics that we saw in something similar like Valheim. And what more could you want from a first-time developer once again? I think it's safe to say that this year has been absolutely fantastic for medieval gaming, and it can only get better. You see, whilst I've mentioned that things like Mount & Blade, Chivalry 2, even the Crusader Kings series are really taking the medieval genre from a niche thing and putting it into the mainstream, there was one franchise that started that. One franchise that is always going to be the grandfather of medieval gaming, at least to many RTS fans, and that is Age of Empires. With Age of Empires 2 being probably one of my favourite medieval games of all time, we are seeing a comeback with Age of Empires 4 coming this October. Whilst it is a little bit of a look into the future, we've already got our hands on the stress test versions, and responses have been amazing. While skepticism was apparent during its promotion, with some weird choices to have a lack of gameplay and more focusing on some cinematic content for the game, I think Age of Empires 4 is really at the stage where it could pull it off at this point. Having a worthy graphical update, and of course those beautiful animations, especially when it comes to building destruction. If anything, this year has been a beautiful laid cake, having some big hitters and some smaller sprinklings in the middle, and finally Age of Empires 4 looks like it's going to be the cherry on top, to bring the whole thing together and perhaps create, at least in my opinion, the best year we have ever had for medieval games. But please let me know what you think. Is there another contending year, or what have been your favorite games that have come out from 2020 to 2021? Because it's been pretty tricky. Everybody's been stuck at home. Some people have had it worse than others, but I think gaming is one of those beautiful things that can bring everybody together. That's why people watch videos like this, because they've experienced stuff like this and they want to hear other people's opinions. They want to have a conversation based around their favorite games. And whether we're talking about World War II, ancient Rome, or a total war game, people come together to experience the things they love. And at the end of the day, that's why I wanted to make this video, to just talk about the games that have come out this year that I've absolutely loved. But please, leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Leave a dislike if you didn't. But until then, I will see you in the next one.